Hi, and welcome to the class for beginners in After Effects. We're just going to do a quick introduction to the program itself. I'm just going to go down here and start from scratch, click on the program and open it. I'm running After Effects Creative Cloud 2014 version. So you might get this warning about graphics card. It's not a big deal, just hit OK. Here's a welcome screen. You can turn the default on and off, that'll show right here. I'll just close out of that. And this is our workspace. If it doesn't look like this for you, you can go to Window Workspace and hit Standard or Reset Standard. You can actually adjust different things, and sometimes you might accidentally pull tabs around and move things around in a way you didn't anticipate. Just go back up here to Workspace, Reset Standard, and we're ready to go. Okay, to get started, we need a composition. We need an empty space to basically start making things. So we can have multiple compositions in one project. Right now, we're in a project. This is overall After Effects interface is a project in and of itself. When we hit File, Save, we're saving a project. But when we go down here and say create a new composition, that's like a little mini video inside of our project. You can set all the attributes here. I'm going to go with HD. 24 frames a second is very common for animation. And so at 48 frames, that's 2 seconds. And hit OK, and now we have a nice blank canvas we can start doing things on. On the left here, we have our project. That's where all of the, if we bring in an image, right click and import a file, all of that stuff will be here. I'll pull in something random just so we have something in there. All of those assets will be listed in the project window here. So we have our blank composition here, and we have nothing in our layers window down here. So to do that, we can right click anywhere and say new text, for example. And we'll start with text. So we can just type anything. We have to select the text to be able to change the color, and we can change it to anything. We can change the font and the size, and if we started doing some more typing, we could change the spacing or set it to auto. All kinds of fun stuff with text. The next thing, we'll need a background. So let's create a background of a different color and hit OK. We could name that here if we wanted, or once it's created, we can go click on it in the layer window and hit enter, and then we can start typing and call this background. Now we can also change the view of this in the layers composition, so we have a different color that represents it. So that's creating a couple objects here. We won't be using the lights or cameras much, that's for 3D, but null objects are pretty important. For example, we could parent the text to this null object. And let me just turn off the background, because the null object is just like this red square. It's just representative. It won't actually render when you render anything, but you can now notice when I move the null around, it's moving the text. So it's a way you create new pivot points, you can move groups of things around. If I unparent that and move the null over here, now I have a pivot point on the corner. You can also move the pivot points of things with this cursor up here fairly easily. This is the pivot point of things, and it will scale and rotate from that, so we could move it down there and it'll scale and rotate from that position. So that's most of the stuff we're going to be doing. We're going to have a few shape layers. We'll get into that later. If you have any questions, ask in discussion. If you ever get stuck on anything, for example, let's turn back on the background, and if we double click it, we get to the kind of isolated view of the background. And sometimes this confuses people because now we've lost our text. If we were working on our text now, where to go? How do we get back to that? So if this happens to you, just don't worry about it. And you can find this in the top left here on composition. We were just in a different tab in this isolated view. So if you ever get stuck on that, look up here and go back to the composition view. And let's name this composition intro over here. So we just hit enter to be able to do that again over here. One important thing we want to cover is we'll go into preferences and general. I want to make sure that it is set for default spatial interpolation to linear. What that means is things will just behave the way we expect them to. There's a few instances where if you don't have this checked, some goofy things will happen with animation. Once we access all of these different attributes down here, we can animate them by clicking these little stopwatches on the left. So we've set a keyframe for position. So if we move over in time and then drag it, now we can see that it's animated that distance. This is just a very quick overview for those of you who feel overwhelmed by After Effects. It's basically Photoshop for video. So don't get too overwhelmed by it. we're going to be doing a lot just in these layers and in this window, and that's about it. If you follow along with all the ingredients that we'll be covering, you can piece it all together into your own recipe. The majority of this stuff you don't really have to worry about yet. All these little buttons won't affect you whatsoever. The biggest thing you need to know is how to create things, how to stack things in the layer, click and drag it, rename things, keep it organized, and how to animate. Follow along in these lessons and you'll notice different shortcuts I use while I'm animating that will speed up your workflow and get you familiar with the process. Thanks for watching and look forward to seeing you in the next lesson.